We've made it to episode 150, and what we're going to do between now and September 1 is we're going to be bringing some episodes back to hear them again. And at first, I kind of thought this would be a placeholder just to get us to September, but I've gone back and listened to some Speak Lords, and they are speaking to me. God has been in this. These are meaningful messages, and I've looked back over 150 episodes and another 91 episodes for kids. Some of those are coming back. Each week, I'm going to bring back a couple episodes, sometimes 3, 4, or even 5, which means that the weekly Speak Lord is not going to be 5 minutes. It might be 20 or 25 minutes. And the 2 episodes that I have today speak of God's leading. He leads us to the still waters and to the mountaintops. So the first episode is actually Speak Lord for Kids, episode 1. It's the most downloaded episode of all time on Speak Lord. It only has 79 downloads, but it still is number 1. And I remember setting up for this episode. Podcasting was entirely new to me. I had spent days figuring out how to set it up online. And then I grabbed a microphone and a microphone stand from the church. And I brought it home because it was the beginning of shutdown with COVID. So I was prepared to do church from home. And I set up this microphone stand and microphone in my bathroom. And I remember that Rue, she's my daughter who is the voice on all the Speak Lord for Kids. So she's sitting there on the toilet talking into a microphone. And I just asked her to pick one of her favorite memory verses and read it and then talk about it. And this recording captures that moment and a really special message.
Speak Lord for Kids. Psalms 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I will always have everything I need. He gives me green pastures to lay in. He leads me by calm ponds of water. He restores my strength. He leads me on right paths to show that He is good. Even if I walk through a valley as dark as a grave, I will not be afraid of any danger because you are with me. Your rod and staff comfort me. You prepare a meal for me in front of my enemies. You welcome me as an honored guest. My cup is full and spilling over. Your goodness and mercy will be with me all my life, and I will live in the Lord's house a long, long time. This verse comforts me because Jesus will always be with me. At school, this was my memory verse, and I never had time to reflect on it, and when I had that as a verse, I reflected on it, and I really like that verse. I hope you will be comforted with Jesus' love. Speak Lord is a resource of the Palmer Seventh-day Adventist Church. Find us online at palmerak.adventistchurch.org
and at pastorryanrogers.com. Let's grow with Jesus.
So that was Rue's very first Speak Lord, and her reflections focused on God leading us to a place of comfort. Another episode that made the top 20 downloads is called It's Good for Us to Be Here. And not only does God lead us to still waters, He also leads us to mountaintop moments with Him. In this episode, I think I was tired, and you can kind of hear low energy in my voice, but it's a thought that means a lot to me. When God leads us somewhere to be with Him, we don't have to produce anything. The purpose of those moments is to be present with Him. So here's our second episode for this week. It's good for us to be here. You're listening to Speak Lord. I'm Ryan Rogers. Mark 9 and Matthew 17 both tell the story of the Transfiguration. Jesus had been traveling with His disciples, teaching and performing miracles. It was exhausting, and He had just told His disciples about His death, and they were really struggling with it. Back in Mark chapter 8, it says that He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. The text says that Jesus said these things plainly. He was very clear about what would happen. And that's when Peter stood up and rebuked him. And Jesus turned and rebuked Peter by saying, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." So this had been their experience, an exhausting tour of teaching, preaching, miracles, and then a confusing struggle about what Jesus was about to do. And that's when Jesus takes them up a mountain. The text tells us it was a high mountain. They were tired and they probably preferred to find a bed, and Jesus is taking them up a mountain. And on that mountain, he was transfigured before him. It says, Mark 9, verse 3, "And his clothes became radiant, intensely white, as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. And Peter said to Jesus, 'Rabbi, it is good for us to be here.'" And he was right. It was so good for them to be in the presence of Jesus and to see his glory. I was reminded of this myself just a few weeks ago when I had been working really hard and hadn't gotten outside much. There's always things that could be done, but one day when the sun came out, I just decided to stop doing things and go for a hike. So I went out to one of my favorite spots, went up a trail and got up on this ridge. And I looked down over the valley and the sun was setting and it was just perfect. And my time on the mountain turned into a time of worship. And as I stood in awe of God and worshiped him, I thought, it is good for me to be here. We can't be on the mountaintop all the time. There is more in our life than just these special holy moments, but we need them. It is so good for us to be in the presence of God, to worship him and be amazed by him. And if you haven't had that experience for a while, seek it. It is so good for us to experience the glory of God. And we can relate to those disciples who were weary, needing some rest, maybe a bit confused about God's plan. What we need is the same thing they needed, to meet God in a holy moment. And when we have these holy moments, what should we do with them? Well, Peter came to a conclusion that didn't really work. He felt how good it was to be there, and then he offered to make some shelters for Moses and Elijah. And the text says he said this because he didn't know what to say, and he was terrified. In their experience, it says that a cloud overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." And then it was over. Moses and Elijah were gone, and there was just Jesus and his disciples. God was just wanting Peter to experience his presence. He didn't want him to do anything. He didn't need him to put up shelters. The main point of these holy moments that God gives us is not for us to produce something, but for us to experience him. Peter had been arguing with Jesus about who he was and what he was about to do, and the voice came and said, "No, this is my Son." The voice from heaven affirmed who Jesus was, and then it said gently, "Listen to him. Stop arguing with him. Listen to him." And we need these moments on the mountain because when we come down the mountain, there is a world of evil bombarding us. In Matthew 17, right after they come off the mountain, the next verse says, "And when they came to the crowd, a man came up to him and kneeling before him said, 'Lord, have mercy on my son, for he has seizures and he suffers terribly. For often he falls into the fire and often into the water.'" The first experience they have after this holy moment on the mountain is an encounter with demon possession. We need these moments in the presence of God to sustain us as we live our lives in the presence of evil. It is so good for us to be in the presence of God. How is God speaking to you? Speak, Lord. Your servant is listening. You can find more of Speak. Well, hey, thanks for continuing with Speak, Lord, as we bring back some of these episodes. Just a reminder of what's happening. We are rebuilding Speak, Lord. We're going to be launching on a new platform with the name Speak, Lord in September. And until then, we're bringing back episodes to give me a little space to work on the future of Speak Lord. Look for updates as we go. I expect that you'll get them every couple weeks. And until then, enjoy these episodes that we're bringing back from the past 2 years of Speak Lord. How is God speaking to you? Speak Lord. Your servant is listening.